In the second week of February 1949, 3 men were charged with provoking the death of over 10 people in Ecuador. The method of their crime: creating a radio play based on H.G. Wells, and then letting it loose on an unsuspecting public. Literary historian Michael Henrik Wynn explains.
It was an incident far more sinister than the panics that followed the 1938 broadcast in America, when Orson Welles had first dramatized H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds on radio. Not even the effect of a similar 1944 radio broadcast in Chile could compare when it came to the number of deaths and the level of devastation. On the fateful night of February 12th, writers for the Associated Press and Reuters reported back to the US and Britain. The mob attacked and burned the building of the newspaper El Comercio, which housed the radio station, and killed 15 persons and injured 15 others. The radio broadcast was the brainchild of Leonardo Paez, director of art at Radio Quito, and Eduardo Alcaraz, the station's dramatic director. The two had become familiar with the 1938 incident in America and the 1944 incident in Chile, which both caused widespread panic, but which also exposed the power of radio. In both cases it was announced ahead of schedule that the broadcast would be a fictional dramatization. Leonardo Paez, a native of Quito, was not only a journalist but also a singer, a composer, a poet, a producer of radio. In an interview with El Dia, Alcaraz later said that he begged Paez to announce at the beginning of the broadcast that what followed was a dramatization, but that Paez had dismissed him. Even so, someone had planted bogus UFO reports in the newspaper El Comercio in the weeks before the broadcast. At 2100 hours, the night of February 12th, the normal music broadcast began. Halfway into a song, the news team interrupted without warning, stating that an attack on Ecuador was underway. Panic erupted in the streets, and police were dispatched to the alleged location of a Martian invasion. The imaginary invasion was gradually to proceed from the town of Latacunga, 20 miles south of the capital Quito, where a poisonous gas cloud was reported to kill everything in its path. Actors imitating well-known authority figures then appeared on radio, confirming the crisis. When the station realized that chaos was breaking out, they announced the hoax on radio. The crowd then gathered outside the radio station, throwing stones and setting fire to the building. According to the Associated Press, there were over 100 people in the building. Some escaped through the back doors, others sought refuge on the top floors, with some of them jumped from the roof in order to escape the flames. The army was then called in, with tear gas and tanks to disperse the crowd and allowed the firemen to do their work. At the end of the evening, bodies lay silent in the street, and the injured were shipped off to hospital. The station managers protested their innocence, saying they had been unaware of the planned hoax, and the Minister of Defense himself was called in to investigate the incident. 10 people were detained the night of the riot, and several were later charged, among these Leonardo Paez, Eduardo Alcaraz, and the actor Eduardo Palas. Eduardo Alcaraz had fled Quito, but was arrested later in the town of Ambato. Paez, however, had escaped that night from the burning building. Seeing that his route of retreat was cut off by an angry mob and the police, he found a way of escaping via an old conservatory. A truck then took him to a property near Ibarra, and he laid low until his legal difficulties were solved. 6 years later he left Ecuador and made his way to Venezuela. Paez lost his girlfriend and his nephew in the chaos created by his own radio play. They died in the riots. He would never return to Ecuador or be convicted of anything, but in 1982 he published his account of the radio play he broadcast on that Saturday evening in 1949. His book is called Los que siembran viento, Those who sow the wind. There was much speculation about the causes of the panic that erupted after so many broadcasts of the War of the Worlds in the US, in Chile, and in Ecuador. Just a year after the Wells broadcast, the psychologist Hadrig Cantrell conducted a study of the effects of the radio show, in which he claimed that the cause of the confusion following the broadcast was the standard of judgment that people applied to the information they heard on radio. They simply trusted the new media of radio and couldn't believe that someone would deliberately lie to them. Seeing the effectiveness of the broadcast as perhaps being too calculated, the writer Daniel Hopsicker even speculated that the 1938 broadcast was a psychological experiment founded by the Rockefeller Foundation, a conspiracy theory which was dismissed by Orson Welles.
I'm of course surprised that the H.G. Wells classic, which is the original for many fantasies about invasions by mythical monsters from the planet Mars. I'm extremely surprised to learn that a story which has become familiar to children through the medium of comic strips and many succeeding novels and adventure stories should have had such an immediate and profound effect upon radio listeners.
This is historyradio.org, a non-profit radio stream promoting knowledge of literary classics and history.